Hey everyone, Rick Oliva here. In this video I'm going to discuss creating movable chord forms, also sometimes called bar chords, although not every movable chord is a bar chord. Creating movable chords out of the C, A, G, E, and D major chords, also sometimes referred to as the CAGED system, C-A-G-E-D, the CAGED system. When we create those movable chords, we can also relate those to different inversions of chords. So a basic triad of your root position, your first inversion, second inversion. And then ultimately how we can incorporate these different chord forms to create more variety for some of our musical compositions. We can start playing guitar parts instead of just strumming chords. So I'm going to assume that you already know how to play C, A, G, E, and D major chords. If you don't, there's plenty of tutorials. I might end up making one in the future on how to do that. But just for reference, what I'm referring to is this basic C major chord, A major chord, G, E, and D, all in open position. Now, when I'm discussing these, I'll call this, and when we do these as movable forms, I'll call this the C form, the A form, G form, E form, and D form. Now, if I put a capo, I think the easiest way to get into this topic is by using a capo as an example. So if I put a capo on the second fret there, and then I play what looks like a C chord, I'm actually playing a D chord because I've moved my C chord, all the notes in the C, I've moved them up 2 frets, and 2 frets higher than the C is a D. So if everything moves equally, I'm now playing a C major, or I'm now playing a D major chord instead of a C major chord. If I were to move my capo up 1 more fret, 3 frets higher, I'd now be playing an E flat major chord. And this, although it looks like a G chord, it's not a G chord. It's a, where are we? It's a B flat chord. Alright? Now, if I were to take off the capo and play that same C form, starting on the 5th fret, it's actually a nice sounding chord. If I were to move up 1 fret though, it's quite a bit more dissonant. Now, if that's the sound you're looking for, then that's fine. That's the sound you're looking for. But as you can see, it doesn't move equally, and that's because the open strings aren't moving with me. Once again, the capo is holding down the 2nd fret, so I can play what would normally be open strings, and they get caught by the capo here on the 2nd fret. If I take the capo away and I still want to play this form, though, I would need to swap out these fingers. So now my pinky goes where my 3rd finger was. So we're still playing all the same notes. My index finger now has to go where the capo was. So my index finger, in essence, is acting as a capo. Alright, now I can move up here. And now I don't have that dissonance of... because now my index finger is holding down the 3rd fret. The same thing happens for all the other forms that we would do. So the way you want to learn this and practice this is you say, okay, well, if my index finger has to go where the capo is, but I still have to play all the other notes. Now if I'm playing an A chord, well, now I take off the capo. My index finger would have to go down here to the 2nd fret. So the other notes could be played with these fingers like this, or I could bar it with 1 finger. If we want to get all the way to the top of there, I could do this and I have all the notes. So that's the A form. If I have the G form, once again, put the capo on there. The G form would be something like this. Now, this is very uncomfortable to play. I have a hard time getting them all myself. And so that's a form that I don't ever actually play the whole thing at once. It's a little bit easier on the electric guitar. Strings are a little bit smaller, frets, or the neck's a little bit thinner. But I might play this. Okay? So now instead of trying to get these fingers down here, I'm just playing the top part. And that gets into the topic of inversions that we'll get into next. So that's the G form. The E form, once again, if I just take it from here, E form, I can just move it from here, move up. Now I got an F chord. Now I have a G chord. Now I have an A flat chord. Now I have an F sharp major chord. And then last but not least, if we take the D chord, we can move up 2 frets and we have an E. But what about that open string? So now we play like this. And maybe I'll end up just playing these 3 notes and I won't play the high E string. Maybe I'll just play the top 3 strings instead of playing everything. But these are the most common movable chord forms that you'll probably going to come across as far as major chords. You can do the same thing with minor chords. If I take an A minor chord like this, I can move up 2 frets. My index finger goes where the capo would have been, or it moves up 2 frets. And there's my minor chord. If I have a C7 chord, I can go like this. Well, I can move the chord, but I don't have an extra finger to move up that open string, but it's still movable, just the way it is. Now, how we can incorporate that, well, or we can look at inversions first here. So if I look at these different forms, now, if say I wanted to play the chord progression G, C, D, G. Normally I could play G to a C, to a D, back to a G. Now using movable forms, maybe I say, okay, well, I'm going to play my E form, which looks like this. I'm going to play a G major chord as an E form. Slide up to the 3rd fret. Now, it sounds a lot, or sounds very similar, but it's not exactly the same as that. And now I might say, okay, I'm going to play the A form of the C chord and the A form of the D chord back to the G, right? So what happens if we keep moving up? Well, one way we could do that is we could play the C form of a G chord, which we take our C, and we'd have to put our root all the way up here on the 10th fret of the A string. Now I went to an E form of the C chord, to an E form of the D chord, back to the C form of the G chord. So now that does sound different because now we're hitting higher notes. We're hitting a higher voicing. The low note still is, for the C chord and the D chord are still the same. The G chord, the lowest note, is actually an octave higher. So we can go from now, sometimes what we want to do is just accentuate some of these differences or create a guitar part that is something other than just strumming chords. What ends up happening a lot of times is if we try to play all the strings, any individual string in there sort of gets lost in the shuffle, so to speak. So by making smaller voicings or using less strings, we can actually accentuate some melodic properties of these different chord forms. So that's a really fancy way of just saying play less notes, and it can sound better sometimes. For example, say I take the E form of the G chord and the A form of the D chord, of the C chord, and the A form of the D chord, but I only play the top 3 strings. Well, now, instead of having this, I have this. If I play it up higher, where I was showing you before, where I did the C form of the G chord and then the E form of the C and the D, I have this. Going from here. Now, if I have a song where, say there's a piano player or there's another guitar player, and there's someone already holding down the chords at the bottom, especially if there's another acoustic guitar player and they're already playing. Maybe I do this. Now, to give you an example of what that sounds, I just so happen to have a backing track prepared. So, if this works, you'll be able to hear the difference. Okay. So that's how it works. If I wanted to play some different voices, if I wanted it to go down, you can do something like that. If it'll play. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you think it was, you can visit my website, send me an email, leave comments down there, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, go to my website, www.rickoliva.com, or go to my Patreon site, www.patreon.com/rickoliva, and there will be more to come in the coming weeks and months and years and days and hours and minutes. Thank you very much.